This is the only hour that ever was or ever will be. For during this hour, you will decide your future and thus our collective futures. You're listening to the Hour of the Time. I'm your host, William Cooper. Is that the kind of world you want for your children and grandchildren? How about for yourself? Well, I can tell you it's not the kind of world that I want for myself or for my children or for my grandchildren or for their children and grandchildren. Although after I'm gone, it will be their duty to pick up the banner and determine their future. But now it's my job to try and make the future for them the best that it can possibly be. You see, I take my responsibility seriously. There is a group of men and women in this country, the United States, and in most of the major countries of the world who belong to secret societies and organizations, many different ones under many different names, and most of these people belong to several of these groups, not just one or two, whose goal is to destroy the sovereignty of nations, destroy all existing religions, place the great mass of people of the world in chains, if not literally, then figuratively, to where they can be controlled for every single moment of every 24-hour period of their life. I'm going to do something tonight no one has ever done before, and once I've done it, you will have a better understanding of what's happening to this country. There are two major organizations in the United States which are working from within to destroy this great nation and bring about a one-world totalitarian socialist government. These two organizations are the Council on Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission, and these folks are the major players. The men who make up, and women, who make up the membership of these two organizations also belong to many of the other so-called fraternal organizations existing, quote, for the good of the community, unquote, such as Freemasonry, the Ancient Order of the Rose and Cross, the Knights Templar, the Red Cross of Constantine, the Sovereign and Military Order of the Knights of Malta, the Order of St. John of Jerusalem, the Jesuit Order. And I could go on and 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 on. The Round Table Group, the Businessman's Round Table Group. And you have these people at the head of your city government, your state government, your National Guard, our military services, all of them, the federal government, the media, the energy companies, corporate America, both houses of Congress, business and industry leaders, including the heads of the labor unions. You belong to a labor union and you think they're working for you? Well, you're wrong. They're working toward a one-world government, and you are one of the pawns, one of the tools that are getting them there. Colleges and university residents, presidents, and university professors, banks, the entire Federal Reserve System, the Department of State, the ambassadors to foreign countries, the Library of Congress, National Science Foundation, U.S. Arms Control and Disarmament Agency, Federal Judicial Center, Office of Science and Technology, the Export-Import Bank, Office of Management and Budget, the White House staff, the Treasury Department, Office of Technology Assessment, Environmental Protection Agency, African Development Fund, Office of U.S. Trade Representatives, U.S. Institute for Peace, the entire branch of the judiciary, and every single member of the President's Cabinet, and, of course, the President himself. So here we go, folks. Hang on to your hats. First, I'm going to read you a quote from the book written by Senator Barry Goldwater entitled With No Apologies. And this is just so you'll know that I didn't make this up out of my Said, folks. He says, the Council on Foreign Relations is the American branch of a society which originated in England and believes national boundaries should be obliterated and one world rule established. He also says, the Trilateral Commission is international and is intended to be the vehicle for multinational consolidation of the commercial and banking interests by seizing control of the political government of the United States. Make no mistake, he is absolutely correct.
The year is 1917, and Representative Oscar Callaway enters a disturbing statement into the U.S. Congressional Record. The statement reveals why J.P. Morgan interests hired 12 high-ranking news managers. The 12 were asked to determine the most influential newspapers in America. They were to figure out how many news organizations it would take to control generally the policy of the daily press of the United States. The 12 found it was only necessary to purchase the control of 25 of the greatest papers. An agreement was reached. The policy of the papers was bought, and an editor was placed at each paper to ensure that all published information was in keeping with the new policy. Soon, that policy would be defined by a front group formed by J.P. Morgan and his colleagues. In fact, Morgan's personal attorney was founding president of the organization, the Council on Foreign Relations. Today, the CFR maintains that its goal is to increase America's understanding of the world. However, the actual objective of this highly exclusive club is revealed by the rare admissions of the insiders themselves. In the early 60s, a Georgetown University professor collects information for a book favorable to the network of powerful men who founded the CFR. For 2 years, Professor Carroll Quigley is allowed to examine the confidential papers and secret records of this network. Quigley reveals that these men aim to create a world system of financial control in private hands, able to dominate the political system of each country and the economy of the world as a whole. In short, they seek total and quiet control of the entire world. And the CFR is their most visible conduit for carrying out that agenda. CFR members include America's wealthiest tycoons, as well as the highly placed elite in government, academic institutions, tax-exempt foundations, and the establishment media. Ruling Class Journalists, written by Richard Harwood, describes the CFR membership as the ruling establishment in the United States. The Washington Post article boasted that news reporters who are CFR members do not merely analyze and interpret foreign policy for the United States, they help make it. Who are these policymakers? Many of their faces are familiar. NBC's Tom Brokaw, CBS's Dan Rather, ABC's Barbara Walters, Jim Lehrer of PBS, William F. Buckley of National Review, media mogul Rupert Murdoch, owner of the giant multifaceted News Corporation. These media heavyweights, and many others like them, are members of the CFR. Powerful corporations are also invited to become members. At the close of the 20th century, CFR influence presided over far-reaching consolidations of media control. In 1995, CFR members Michael Eisner of Disney and ABC's Thomas Murphy merged their media empires. Soon after the merger, the Disney-ABC empire becomes a CFR corporate member. In the year 2000, the world's largest internet service provider, America Online, joins forces with Time Warner, one of the world's largest news organizations. The CEOs favoring the move are CNN's Thomas Johnson and Time Warner's Gerald Levin, both CFR members. Once again, another media giant is created under the shadow of CFR influence. Today, an elite handful of individuals define the agendas that are supported by the empire of establishment news.
Ladies and gentlemen, tonight you've been listening to part one of a three-part series entitled The Illuminati, produced by Anthony J. Hilder, narrated by Myron Fagan.
Now, in order to give you a very clear picture of this satanic plot, I will go back to its beginning, clear back in the middle of the 18th century, and name the men who put that plot into action, and then bring you down to the present, today's status of that plot. However, the vitally important thing for all Americans, all you mothers of the boys who died in Korea and are now dying in Vietnam, to know is that our so-called leaders in Washington, whom we elected to safeguard our nation and our Constitution, are the betrayers, and that behind them are a comparatively small group of men whose sole objective is to enslave the whole world of humanity in their satanic plot of one world government. Now, as a matter of further intelligence, a term used by the FBI, let me clarify the meaning of the expression, "He is a liberal." The enemy, meaning the one-world conspirators, have seized upon that word liberal as a cover-up for their activities. It sounds so innocent and so humanitarian to be liberal. Well, make sure that the person who calls himself a liberal or is described as a liberal is not in truth a red. Now then, this satanic plot was launched back in the 1760s when it first came into existence under the name of the Illuminati. This Illuminati was organized by one Adam Weishaupt, born a Jew, who was converted to Catholicism and became a Catholic priest, and then, at the behest of the then newly organized House of Rothschild, defected and organized the Illuminati. Naturally, the Rothschilds financed that operation. And every war since then, beginning with the French Revolution, has been promoted by the Illuminati, operating under various names and guises. I say under various names and guises because after the Illuminati was exposed and became too notorious, Weishaupt and his co-conspirators began to operate under various other names. In the United States, immediately after World War I, they set up what they called the Council on Foreign Relations, commonly referred to as the CFR. And this CFR is actually the Illuminati in the United States. And its hierarchy, the masterminds in control of the CFR, to a very great extent, are the descendants of the original Illuminati conspirators. But to conceal that fact, most of them changed their original family names to American-sounding names. For example, the true name of the Dillons, Clarence and Douglas Dillon, once Secretary of the U.S. Treasury Department, is Lepowski. I'll come back to all this later. There is a similar establishment of the Illuminati in England, operating under the name of the British Institute of International Affairs. There are similar secret Illuminati organizations in France, Germany, and other nations operating under different names. And all these organizations, including the CFR, continuously set up numerous subsidiary or front organizations that are infiltrated into every phase of the various nations' affairs. But at all times, the operations of these organizations were and are masterminded and controlled by the internationalist bankers, who in turn were and are controlled by the Rothschilds. The details of how they accomplished the setting up of the CFR in the United States, as also in the other nations, are far too voluminous to be described in this dissertation. But you can find it complete in News Bulletin number 122, entitled UN is Spawn of the Illuminati, and News Bulletin number 123, entitled CFR Completely Unmasked as Illuminati. Both are published by the Cinema Educational Guild, Post Office Box 46205, Hollywood, California. You can get them for 50 cents per copy by writing to that address. Those news bulletins reveal the names of the original founders of the Illuminati and the Americanized names of their descendants in the present CFR. Now I'll go back to the activities of the original Illuminati conspirators, as revealed in News Bulletin number 122.